Today's Toy Spot, we're having a look at a little bit of an older figure, whereas we're actually having a look at the original Mattel Batman line of figures. We're looking today at Ice Cannon Mr. Freeze. This figure probably does look familiar in that this is the original sculpt, the original release of this sculpt of Mr. Freeze. This Mr. Freeze would eventually find his way into the DC Superheroes line, in which he was part of a Batman line. Don't worry, we'll get into that later. He was also included later into the Batman Legacy line too. So he's made the rounds. This is, though, the original figure. Down below there's a picture of Mr. Freeze, and I like that picture quite a bit. Down below he's firing his freeze cannon. He's got a much larger cannon than, I guess, later Mr. Freeze figures. This Mr. Freeze also includes a Batman comic, free comic inside. On the back of the package, there is a picture of Mr. Freeze. Now, being that this is the original Mr. Freeze, this one actually still has its gimmick in place. Whereas you actually filled the back cannon canisters with water, and he would actually shoot that water. As indicated, ice cannon, and he also has a swivel head, all of which we'll get into when the figure gets opened up. Other figures from the original Batman Legacy or Batman line. We had several different versions of Batman, none of which really appealed to me. And I always found this to be a really garish-looking Batmobile. It was a two-seater. It was intended for both Batman and Robin, but it was just a little too much. A little too much, and Spot passed on it, totally. And also, if you're wondering when this figure was released, let's see if we can find an actual date on here. We are looking at, oh, there it is, right there, 2003. 2003. So this figure is actually 10 years old, almost 10 years old. Now, there was this figure, depending on how you found him locally in retail. There was the figure that had goggles, and there was also the figure that had no goggles. No goggles at all. Body-wise was the exact same figure, same freeze cannon, nothing different between the two. But what I am going to do is I'm going to take a bit of a break. I'm actually going to open both figures up so you guys can see the comparison between the two. You guys can let me know which ones you prefer. But certainly more is on the way. Don't go anywhere, my friends. Stay tuned. So getting it out of the way, the comic that comes with this Mr. Freeze is Batman 608. Batman 608. Jeff Loeb, Jim Lee, S. Williams. Special edition. I actually think I have this original comic somewhere. Really nice artwork inside. There's Killer Croc. Right there. Moving that aside. Don't need to show that anymore. The Mr. Freeze is a really good figure. However, there is some sad news. When I initially bought this figure, I bought this figure because I much preferred the design of this suit as opposed to the suit that we got with the initial Mr. Freeze from Superheroes. Maybe as a comparison, we'll just zoom the camera back here for a second. You do probably recognize this Mr. Freeze, I'm sure. This was the Mr. Freeze from the DC Superheroes line. Wasn't a bad figure, but I really did not like the fact that they gave him almost like a belly, a bare stomach, and they've also given him arms. Freeze arms, I don't know, it was supposed to be part of his real skin, but obviously the real jarring aspect was the fact that he had the lines, the panel lines from the armor on his arms. A lot of this figure was actually pulled from the, I'm sure everybody knows by now, obviously from the Lex Luthor that came from the DC Superheroes line as well. So it was a good figure, but you know there was aspects to it that I really didn't like, being that the arms and the torso. So when I saw an opportunity to get the original, I thought, well, I much prefer this over this one. I'll pick this one up instead. Sadly, though, this figure is a little more basic than what Spot was going to be expecting, in the fact that he has Rotation in the arms, the arms go up. They rotate left and right. Rotation in the arm, you'll see that there's absolutely no bend in the elbow whatsoever, and he also has a rotation in the gauntlet, or in his wrist forearm area. He has the upper torso rotation, but as you can see, part of his gimmick relies on the fact that when you rotate the torso, you also rotate his head. This arm, same idea, rotation in the arm, rotation in the bicep area. And then the legs go forward and back. They don't actually go out. They don't go out. And he has a single bend at the knee, and that appears to be it. If you ask me, I prefer the look of this armor over that of the Mr. Freeze here. This one's got a little more paint applications done to it. I think it looks much nicer. But yeah, I still don't like the fact, again, that they use Lex Luthor's body for these aspects, and then they decided, well, let's just paint them his flesh color and overlook the fact that they've got the lines here from his armor. Even the fact that Mr. Freeze has what looks to be a belly top just really doesn't work for me. The rest of the figure looks nice, but sadly, I just never really was a big fan of this. So, you can pick your poison. You can certainly go with the original, but as you can see, the original is much more basic in design. It's actually even shorter also. So, there you go. Aside from that, the upper torso area and actually the head are the exact same as that of the re-release Mr. Freeze, although you can see that the newer release Mr. Freeze is actually a much more bluer paint scheme. This Mr. Freeze, the original, is a little more pale, a little more of a pastel blue than anything else. Now, as for his accessory, or as for his... Well, you know what? Before we get to that, just to show you guys the comparison, here is the unmasked Mr. Freeze. Let's zoom in. You'll see there's absolutely no difference between the two, aside from his head. One with the goggles, one without the goggles. One looks very, very angry. Right there. I also like, which all Mr. Freezes have had, I also like the fact that there's that condensation at the bottom of his dome. I think that's a really nice added touch. But yeah, aside from that, the variant is the exact same as this Mr. Freeze, just with a different head. Gimmick still works the same. You rotate the upper torso, which rotates the head left and right. Very limited articulation, though. A bit of a shame, but nonetheless. We'll move the variant. We'll move him out of the way. Mr. Freeze's one accessory is the Freeze Cannon and Freeze Backpack, both of which are carried over to all the other Mr. Freezes that we've gotten ever since. The only difference is with the original cannon and the original backpack, this one actually still has the gimmick intact, where there is a little pull tab, and when you pull that out, you can actually fill this with water. You can fill it with agua, and once it's in that chamber, just close it up. And you'll want to press this button right here. This button will actually squirt the water out of the cannon of his handgun, like so. It's the same gimmick it's the same way to plug it in as the original Mr. Freeze, that you can plug it in from the top. There's a little peg there. Was that an hexagon? And you peg that into place, and there you have Mr. Freeze with his cannon backpack. Now, the one thing that's interesting about this backpack as opposed to the other one, because you would almost swear that yes, everything is the exact same. Well, if we actually take the DC Universe, or DC Superheroes Mr. Freeze, and we have a look at the backpack on this one, you'll see that there's a couple of things that they've omitted. In the fact that from the center, you can see that there's 3 tubes. One tube goes to the cannon. The other tubes go nowhere. But on the side of the backpack, there's almost look like a handle, and almost looks like a drip spout, perhaps for excess water. Whereas the DC Superheroes Mr. Freeze does not have that. It doesn't have that at all. They've actually taken the liberty of swapping out those areas for the hoses, and then they've put the hoses at the sides of the knapsack. So they're all kind of contained. The only thing that's loose is the actual Freeze cannon. And there's just a comparison between the two Freeze cannons. You can see that the DC Superheroes Freeze cannon, much better than the original here. Now, we take the Mr. Freeze. I'm just going to put him down for a second. This Mr. Freeze, you're actually going to take these hoses, and because there is no spot here to plug them in, you're actually going to take these hoses and plug them into his arms. Plug one into his arm, like so. It doesn't really seem to go in very well, I've noticed either. You can get it in there, though. A little bit of finagling. You can get one cannon hose, or one backpack hose, plugged into his arm. Do the same on this side, like so. Again, some finessing is required. And it makes it almost look a little more... It makes sense from the character that really this backpack maybe refrigerates the entire suit that he wears, but it ends up making the figure just look a little too wired. It just makes it look like there's just too much going on in the back. For that reason, I do like more so that the cables are plugged into his backpack rather than that of his arms. Although, however, a little side note, which is interesting enough, these hoses can also plug into his arms. His arms have remained also the same, as you can see right here. A little painted differently, but the connection points are still there. So had these hoses come out, you could actually have plugged them into there, but I much prefer the fact that they plug into his knapsack more so. So overall, it's painful because I really had hoped for something a little more basic, outfit-wise, at least paint scheme, to that of what we got with the DC Superheroes Mr. Freeze. That's why I ended up going back and tried to get the original Mr. Freezes, but as you can see, a little more basic. So what looks to be, they've taken from the crotch area all the way up to the forehead, they've kept that all the same, and the only thing that they've swapped out on this Mr. Freeze was Lex Luthor's arms and his legs. Enough to give him the extra articulation that made this figure cooler, no pun intended, but still kind of would have preferred that we would have got just a more mechanical looking suit on Mr. Freeze. And also, yes, we're going to put that Mr. Freeze here. We're going to take the variant, the unmasked variant, or the ungoggled variant, and we're going to put him here. If he can, providing he's going to stand. He's a little back heavy now that he's got the backpack on there. And we got the DC Superheroes Mr. Freeze. And lastly, obviously the only one that we're missing, just going to reach off camera here, is the Batman Legacy Mr. Freeze. Again, utilizing the same body mold as this Mr. Freeze than the ones on the back. But there you have all the Mr. Freezes that have been released from Mattel. I'm hoping that we don't actually get another Mr. Freeze, a true maybe signature collection Mr. Freeze or a DC Universe Mr. Freeze. I'm hoping that if they go back and reuse this mold, at least give it something where it looks more like it's all armor and not so much that it looks like he's got a belly top and, bare arms. And that's the one thing I really don't like about that figure. So moving that out of the way, moving those out of the way. Overall, nice figure. I just wish he had had the articulation that his later released figure ended up having. Spot really should have known, being that the older figures were a little more basic in setup. But still, I like the Mr. Freeze. I like this one right here, just for the fact that he has just a more basic paint design. It's just a shame that I really wouldn't put him with my other DC Universe figures just because on an articulation level, he's just a little more basic. Still though, a great figure, relatively cheap. You could probably find him on eBay. So if you prefer this design, this more metallic, more armored colored scheme of Mr. Freeze, I would say still pick him up. And if you don't mind putting him on display and he doesn't have as much articulation, well, that's alright too. There's no rules saying that it has to be a certain way. Spot just prefers ones that are a little more articulated for the sense of posing and whatnot. Batman from the Mattel, Mr. Freeze, I should say, from the original Mattel Batman line, I'm going to give this figure a 6. Not a bad figure, just it's a shame he was as basic as what he was. Certainly stick around, guys. More toy spots are heading your way. And as always, I will see you guys next time. Stay cool. Spot. See you guys next time.